Oh, hello. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Hey there, neighbor. Joe Gilder here from Home Studio Corner. In this video, I'm going to propose a ridiculous scenario, give you a little exercise to try with me right now, and then help you and me both get better mixes. Sound like a plan? Let's dive in. Let's say you're a carpenter, and I hired you to build me a table. And I said, I want it to be 4 feet long. You're going to use a lot of different tools to build that table, right? But probably, arguably, one of the most important tools would be this sucker right here, a tape measure. Now, let's imagine, just to take this scenario and make it even more ridiculous, that an evil sorcerer named, let's call him Graham, has cast a spell on your tape measure so that it doesn't measure consistently. You don't know this, so you just whip out your tape measure and go to work. You measure it out, 48 inches, you measure it twice because you're a good little carpenter, then you cut the board. Move on to the next board, measure it out, 48 inches, and the next one, and the next one. Next thing you know, you lay the boards next to each other, and they're all different lengths. They're not even close. And you're sitting there scratching your head wondering what happened because you know you measured it right. You did it the same way every time. Now, bear with me. These little things, these flaps on the side of our head, our ears, are amazingly well-designed tools, but they're not super consistent and they're not super accurate all the time. Let me prove it to you. Put on your imagination hat for just a second. I want you to imagine that you're sitting here across from me in my studio. I'm at my desk, you're sitting right there, and I've got a big snare drum in front of me, and I got a drumstick in my hand, okay? Are you there? Are you sitting there with me? Now, on the count of 3, I am going to reach up and smack this snare drum as hard as I can. When I say the word 3, that's when I'm going to hit it. I want you to imagine that you're here with me, okay? 1, 2, 3. What happened? Did you feel it? If you really were playing along and you really did use your imagination, you felt this weird pressure in your ears on the inside, almost like there was a rush of blood to your ears. So what's happening there? Our ears are trying to protect themselves. Hearing damage is a legit thing. Our brain said, oh no, a loud sound is coming. I'm going to do my best to protect my hearing because I know it can be damaged. And so it does its thing. It's almost like our ears have a built-in limiter that clamps down on what we're hearing in hopes of preventing any sort of damage. While not as dramatic, our ears do the same thing when we mix at loud volumes. That limiter begins to activate over and over and over again, trying to keep us from hurting our ears. And just like any muscle in our body gets fatigued, if you lift weights for a really long time with a really heavy weight, you're going to become fatigued and your muscles aren't going to work as well. They're going to be tired. Our ears are the same way. The more fatigued they are, the worse they work. The cure for this? Well, it's kind of obvious. Mix at lower volumes. Now, there's a second reason to mix at a low volume. Our ears, for whatever reason, they're fascinating. When you listen to things at louder volumes, we perceive them to have more bass and more treble. It's almost like somebody slapped an EQ across our mix bus, boosted the lows, boosted the highs, and said, here, listen to this. Now, while that can sound good, it means, think about it for a second. If you were mixing a song and I snuck in the room, or better yet, Graham Cochran snuck in the room and put an EQ on your mix bus without telling you, and he boosted the lows and the highs, what is that going to mean for you in your mix? It means when you listen, you're going to hear those lows and highs boosted, which means you're probably going to make adjustments to the mix to compensate for those boosted lows and highs. What is the end result going to be? The end result is when you listen on a system that doesn't have that EQ in place, you're going to realize, oh, I don't have enough lows, I don't have enough highs. It's going to sound dull and mid-rangey. That's what happens. Well, guess what? When you listen at loud volumes, it's essentially the same thing. You're putting an EQ on your ears that is going to boost the lows and boost the highs. It may sound good to you in the room, but when you go listen to that same exact mix in your car, on your earbuds, on your home theater system, it's not going to sound right to you because you mixed it at such a loud volume that those lows and highs are boosted disproportionately. So how low is low when we're talking about mixing at low volumes? I first heard this illustrated this way by Graham Cochran, who I think he heard it from Chris Lord-Alge. So we're in good company here, although Graham is an evil sorcerer. Mix at a volume that is low enough to where you can have a conversation over the top of the mix without having to raise your voice. Now, if you're about to slam your laptop shut or throw your phone across the room because you think that's a ridiculous idea, just give it a shot. Try it. What you'll find is you can mix longer because your ears aren't as fatigued. you'll get better, more consistent mixes because you don't have that extra sound causing your ears to do that weird EQ thing that they do. And the third reason is if there's less sound coming out of your speakers, guess what? There's less sound bouncing around your room. If your room is imperfect, and they all are, that means the room is having less of an impact on what you're hearing. And that can only mean you're getting a little bit more of an accurate sound, which means that mix is a little more likely to translate to all the different places you want it to translate to. Now, back to the volume thing. You may say, well, Joe, if I like the sound of the lows and highs boosted at loud volumes, and that's how I always listen to my music everywhere, why is that a problem? I'll tell you why. If you mix in an inaccurate environment, then everywhere else it's not going to sound right. But if you get it right in an accurate environment, where you're not mixing too loud, you have a decent set of speakers, things are coming out fairly accurately to your ears, then when you put it in a big system or a different system and you crank it up, it's gonna do the low and high boost thing. Our ears are always gonna hear that, but it's gonna feel right. If you have the low boost and high thing happening while you're mixing the song, then it's gonna sound like there's too much lows and too much highs. You know you've experienced this. I have as well. I'm as guilty of this as anyone. I'll mix a song and it sounds amazing in here, but it's just too loud. Then I go listen in the car and at whatever volume I listen at, it's got too much highs and too much lows, or the opposite. It's very mid-rangey and I'm not hearing all those delicious highs and lows I was hearing in the studio. So my challenge to you and to me is to be aware of this and to start taking steps towards taming that volume creep that happens when you mix. Easiest thing, grab that volume knob and just turn it down a little bit. And then fight the urge to push everything up in your mix to get it to that loud volume that you're accustomed to. Chances are this is gonna be really uncomfortable. For me, I know I've, over the last year or two, slowly increased the volume at which I'm mixing, and I've gotta work my way back. So it's gonna take a bunch of mixes and probably a few months to get to the point where I'm comfortable mixing at a lower volume, but it's gonna yield better results and less surprises when I take my mixes elsewhere. Now, while you're trying to mix at lower volumes, if you still find yourself without a system for getting that mix from start to finish and you haven't checked out my 5-step mix guide, it is waiting for you. Go to 5stepmix.com. It's 100% free. It'll give you a framework in which to work to know how to start your mixes, how to do the middle part of the mixes, and then how to know the mixes are finished. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you see Graham Cochran, tell him to stop doing his evil sorcery ways. Tell him Joe Gilder said hi. See ya.